Hi, I'm Matt, and this is a tutorial on how to set up your PhotoSentinel Mach II. First, I'm going to go through what comes out of the box. So you obviously have your housing with the PhotoSentinel Mach II inside. You have a visor. You have a quick start guide, make sure you read it. You have a triangular security key for opening the housing, an accessories box, which we'll go through in a moment, and a pole mount for mounting your PhotoSentinel to a pole. And you'll also see this test before installing warning. Now this is so important that I'm actually going to read it word for word in this tutorial. The number one technical tip for use of this unit is that you set up and test it before going out into the field to install it. Because the system integrates with complex cellular technology, you may need to manually configure the equipment to work with your local network. Therefore, to save you time, money and stress at the installation site, it is imperative that you set up and test the system before you travel to install it. We really can't emphasize this enough. The last thing you want is to be up in the air, up a ladder, installing your unit on a pole, only to discover that the settings to connect to your local cellular network are more complex than you realized. So we highly recommend you take it to your office, put it on your desk, get it fully working with your local cellular network long before you head out on site to install it. Let's go through what's in the accessories box. We've got camera cables for your particular camera that you're going to be using with the Mach II. Next up out of the box is an SD card to go in your camera. Now you'll notice that it's a fairly low capacity and there's a note attached to it explaining why that's so. The PhotoSentinel Mach II has to search for the latest photo each time it connects to upload one, and so it goes searching through that SD card to find the latest photo. If you fill the SD card up too much, then it takes longer and longer to search through all the photos to find the latest photo. In the worst case scenario, there's so many photos on there and the search takes so long that it actually cuts into the next trigger time and you're not going to get your next photo. And so for that reason, we've set up the Mach II to only ever save a few photos onto the SD card. And so there's no reason to have a higher capacity SD card. The ultimate storage point on your PhotoSentinel Mach II is the SSD or the flash drive that's plugged into the controller. The best way to think about the SD card in the camera is that it's like a transit lounge. The camera captures the photo passes briefly through the SD card, but its ultimate destination is the storage that's plugged into the controller. So putting a larger capacity SD card won't actually increase the overall storage capacity of your Mach II. Also in the accessories box, you have some hose clamps for attaching the pole mount to a pole, and a bunch of nuts and bolts which will attach your PhotoSentinel housing to the pole mount. You have a smaller bag of bolts which are for attaching the visor to the housing, and also in here you have a security hex bit, and that will undo the security bolts that are at the bottom of the housing on the mount there and also on your solar panel. And lastly, in the accessory box you have a black bag inside which are some silica gel sachets. Now the housing is IP66 weatherproof, so of course it should never get any water in it, but say you are installing in a humid area, then the first time you close that door, it's going to seal some of that humidity into the box. And so having a silica gel sachet in there will help limit any impact of that moisture. We recommend changing the silica gel sachet about once every 6 months, just to make sure you minimize any moisture in the housing. The one other thing that is in some accessory boxes, if you purchase our premium package, is a weatherproof Ethernet connector. And that's to attach to the end of an Ethernet cable and to then screw into the side of your housing where the Ethernet connection is to create a weatherproof seal between the Ethernet and the housing. Now let's have a look inside the housing. Grab your triangle security key and undo the bolts on the back of the door. Now this door will fully detach from the housing, which can help during initial setup, just so it's not flapping around. Unclip it and place it to the side. Inside the housing, if you've purchased a camera from us, you'll see the camera, and then you'll see the carriage down the bottom there with the PhotoSentinel Mach II controller on it. To remove the carriage from the housing, you'll see the two yellow tabs on the side there. Simply put your forefingers through the holes on either side of the controller, thumbs down on the tabs, and pull the carriage out. The carriage at first will come halfway and stop, and this is just a safety feature. If you're high up on a building site and you slip for some reason, you don't want your camera and all the electronics of the Mark II crashing to the ground below, so that will just stop that there. To remove it all the way, just simply push down on those yellow thumb tabs again, and the rest of the carriage will come out. So here we have everything that's needed to run the PhotoSentinel Mark II. On this carriage, we've got an antenna, we've got the lithium-ion battery. Underneath, we've got the controller. At the back here is where all the cables get plugged in. And then on the front here is the controller itself. Along with, in this case, the SSD. Other models will have a flash drive instead of the SSD for storage. Now, if you've purchased a unit from us that has a high gain antenna, your carriage won't have this antenna on the side here, but rather will have the antenna on the side of the housing. What this means for testing is that you're not able to test the functionality of the Mark II outside the housing because the antenna is connected to the housing. So if you have a model with that high gain antenna, anytime you want to test the unit, the carriage will have to go back into the housing in order to connect to the antenna and test it properly. But for the standard package, you can test the full unit outside of the housing just like this. This unit has come with a camera already mounted to the camera plate, but if you're providing your own camera, under the camera plate you'll find a yellow tab. Simply push that forward and that unlocks the camera plate, and the camera plate slides out the side like that. And then it's just a matter of mounting the camera the same as you would to any tripod or camera plate, just with a bolt at the bottom. There's a piece of rubber that sits between the camera and the metal plate to help keep it in position. For some full frame cameras, you may need to remove that bit of rubber so that it fits in the housing if your camera is particularly tall. Before I slide the camera back onto the carriage, I'm just going to put in the power into the battery slot of the camera. So grab your cables, put that battery in, and you can just leave it hanging out for now and slide the camera plate back in and secure it with that yellow tab. And then the other cable that I need is the camera USB cable, and depending on the model camera you're using, there may also be an analog trigger cable. Before I plug this into the camera, I'm actually going to just slide that USB cable under the lens so that I've got the controller end of the cable on the one side and the camera end of the cable on the other side. You can then plug that into the side of the camera, and so what you then have is the USB and the battery cable coming out this side. We're going to route those cables through the hole down on this side and then plug them into the controller. Now, the reason I've run the USB cable from this side of the camera under the lens and then down through the hole on this side to the controller is because over on this side of the controller you'll see two small metal tabs, and those metal tabs connect with the metal springs inside the housing at the back here, and that provides power to your unit. So you don't want to run the cable down this side where it may hang in front of those metal tabs and so restrict the power connection for your unit. Run them under the lens and then bring all the cables together down the hole on this side and plug them in. All the cables are connected, so we can now turn the unit on. First, we'll flick the controller switch to setup, and that will power on the camera and allow you to set your camera settings. Turn your camera on and then set all your camera settings as you would normally. ISO, white balance, aperture priority, and the like. The key thing with camera settings is that in order to save those settings to the camera, you need to switch the camera off and then back on. And that will save the settings to the camera. You then leave the camera on, and it's the PhotoSentinel controller that will power the camera on and off while maintaining those settings. Once your camera settings are all configured, just to make sure, turn the controller back to off and then flick it down again to set up, and just double check that when your camera power's on, it's still got the same settings. Before you switch your PhotoSentinel on for normal operations, it does of course need a way to connect to the internet. So you'll need to grab a SIM card. Now, it takes a micro SIM, so that's not the big SIM that used to go in the old Nokia brick phones, and it's not the tiny little SIM, the nano SIM that goes in smartphones these days. It's the middle-sized SIM, and that goes into the SIM slot on the front of the controller, and push it in until it clicks. And you'll probably need to use your fingernail to get it right in there. And once it clicks and is securely in place, then it's time to switch the controller to on. When you turn it on for the first time with a new SIM card, The controller will first power on the camera and trigger the photo, and then it will make its first connection to the internet over the cellular network. Each cellular network has a unique APN. The APN is the gateway to the internet of that network provider. So the first time you connect with a new SIM card, it will probably take a while to search through all the saved APNs on the controller to try and find one that will allow it to connect with a local network. And if it can't use one of the preloaded APNs to connect to your cellular network, you'll need to manually configure the controller with the correct APN. The instructions for manually loading an APN to the controller are in the Quick Start Guide, and of course, if you need further help troubleshooting, you can contact our support team. Once the unit has connected to the internet using the correct APN, it will upload its first photo, and you'll see the uploading progress bar on the display screen of the controller. It will also provide a status update and get any new settings from the PhotoSentinel server and download those to the controller. Once it's done that, it will fall asleep until the next time it wakes up again and repeats the cycle. After the unit has completed its first connection cycle, there are a couple of other things you want to check to make sure everything's working properly. Firstly, you want to check that photos are being saved to the storage on the unit. So grab your flash drive or the SSD, plug it into a computer and check that the photos are there. And secondly, it's time to log into the PhotoSentinel Control Hub to check that your first photo and status update have uploaded correctly and to start configuring your unit. To access the PhotoSentinel Control Hub, you head to setup.photosentinel.com.au. Then log in with the user details that we've sent you in your welcome email. And that will bring you to this page. You'll see thumbnails for all your equipment. If you've purchased one, obviously you'll just see one. If you've purchased more, they'll all be there. And the thumbnail, if the unit has successfully uploaded its first photo, will be the photo it's uploaded. If you click on the thumbnail or on the link underneath, that will take you to the gallery. There's only going to be one photo there right now. But for all the other functions associated with this installation, you want to click on the drop-down menu up in the top left and then select your unit. And that will bring up all the menu options for that unit. It's going to navigate you straight to the status page, so you can see again that that first photo has uploaded. This is the really picturesque view outside our Melbourne offices. And then you can see here all the other status information. We've just turned the unit on, it's uploaded its first photo, and so that's what you see there. Once it's been going for a while, you'll see a steady stream of system logs appearing there. Here you can also check your voltage, free space on the SD card, temperature, and warnings. And the warnings are where you get any critical system messages that require action. So once on the status page you've checked that that first photo has uploaded successfully, you can then navigate through to the config page. And this is where you're going to set all the intervalometer settings for your equipment. For this introductory setup video, I'm not going to go through each of those settings in great detail, but I will do a quick overview. So the first section, when to take photos. So how often do you want it to take photos, between what hours, and on what days. Upload and connection settings. How often do you want it to connect and upload photos? Now in most use cases, the connection and upload interval is best set at the same frequency as your photo frequency. So if you're taking photos every 15 minutes, set your system to connect and upload every 15 minutes. Sometimes due to network congestion or other issues, or a more aggressive shooting regime where you're shooting photos faster than you can upload them, you can use end-of-day uploads to upload any photos that have not been uploaded during the normal shooting regime. To enable the feature, simply tick the checkbox and then make sure your time to start uploading is set to begin after the last check-in time of your normal regime, and the time to stop uploading is set before the start of the regime the next day. Setting the time zone is fairly self-explanatory. When you tell your unit to turn on at 8 AM in the morning, you want it to do that for the time zone that your unit is in fact stationed in. And then enable weather for this unit. If you tick that and then enter in the coordinates for the location of your equipment, the gallery will display some basic weather information for the time each photo was taken. Timelapse is a feature that allows gallery visitors to play a video-like slideshow of 150 recent photos of the project. It's essentially a quick time lapse, but it plays back at around 15 frames a second. Many of the advanced settings you can just leave as they are, though do read through them just to familiarise yourself with them. I'm going to touch on just a few. So upload photo composition here. You can choose whether to upload JPEG, upload RAW and JPEG, or upload RAW only. Now this doesn't set any settings on the camera, so if you were to choose to shoot RAW and JPEG or just RAW, you would first need to set up your DSLR accordingly. And then files saved to the external drive. So do you want to save only JPEG, all files, only RAW, save nothing to the external drive? The same caveat again, the DSLR itself has to be set up accordingly. Send me warnings when this PhotoSentinel exhibits faulty behavior. Now that should be on after your unit has connected the first time, and it should also be enabled at a user level over in your user settings. But it doesn't hurt to double check that that is ticked. Include this PhotoSentinel in my digest emails. The digest email is a weekly summary email of each piece of equipment's activity for that week. You can choose whether or not to include any one piece of equipment in that digest email. And the last one I want to touch on is SIM card assigned to this PhotoSentinel. This is a field that is just for your reference only, just for your records. Leaving this setting untouched won't have any effect whatsoever on the functioning of the unit. So that's the config page of your unit. The other tab you will want to explore upon initial setup is the photo forwarding tab. And this is where you can set your photo forwarding location to receive every photo after it's been uploaded to the PhotoSentinel server. You can set that for FTP, Dropbox, Google Drive, or Amazon S3. And each of those are fairly self-explanatory if you click on the buttons and follow the prompts. After setting up the hardware and configuring the system on the web app, it's now time to just leave it. As I said at the start of this tutorial, the best thing you can do, the best preparation before you go out on site, is to set your unit running and have it testing for at least 24 hours, if not longer. So after everything is set up, grab the carriage, put it back in the housing, and find a picturesque view outside your office window, and leave it there testing for the next few days. And of course, if anything goes wrong during those few days of testing, you contact our support team and they'll help you troubleshoot it and get it working again. Once your unit's been testing for a while and you're confident it's working the way it should, then it's time to head out and install it on site. But before you do, send our support team an email to tell them when you'll be installing. We know that issues on site during installation can at best be frustrating and at worst be quite costly. And so we want to be ready to support you to make that installation go as smoothly as possible. To demonstrate an on-site install, I've come up here on the roof of our PhotoSentinel offices in Melbourne, Australia. It's a beautiful sunny winter's day. The wind is howling, so my hair may go all over the place, and you may see this pole shake a bit. It's not a very sturdy pole. It's where we normally put our solar panels for testing. Obviously, your unit, if it's going out on site, should go on a pole more sturdy than this, but this will do fine for the tutorial and to show you how to go about an on-site installation. The things I brought with me to the installation are obviously the PhotoSentinel unit itself, the pole mount, the hose clamps to attach the pole mount and the solar panel to the pole. I've brought the solar panel, and then tools-wise, I've brought with me the triangle security key, a shifting spanner, the screwdriver fitted with the 5mm security hex bit, and a drill to speed things up. And that's fitted with a socket to do up the hose clamps. For a standard 2-inch pole like this one, I'm just going to use the included hose clamps that come with the PhotoSentinel kit. But if you've got a larger pole, say a street lamp pole that you're securing your PhotoSentinel to, we recommend using Bandit, which is some metal strapping that can be cut to any length and then comes with the tool to do it up really tight to secure your unit to the pole. First up, I'm going to secure the pole mount to the pole using the hose clamps. You can use a flathead screwdriver to do up the hose clamps, or a socket and a drill like I'm going to use. The PhotoSentinel housing will mount anyway on the pole mount, so I'm going to stick it out to the side here, and then we're going to have the unit facing over behind me there. If you need to mount the PhotoSentinel to a flat vertical surface, you can drill holes in the flat sections where the pole mounts go around when you're securing it to the pole. Drill holes in those flat sections and you can run bolts through that and into the surface that you're securing the PhotoSentinel. Once the pole mount's in place, it's time to mount the PhotoSentinel itself on top. For that, I'm going to use a shifting spanner, the 5mm security hex bit, and the nuts and bolts that are in the accessories pack. The important thing here is to just get that first bolt and nut on as quickly as possible. Don't worry about washers, just do it finger tight. That way, if the unit topples for some reason, you know it's safe. Once that first one's on and your unit's secure, you can put your other nuts, bolts and washers on. The washers just sit between the bolt head and the pole mount and the nut and the bracket. And first up, you just want to get them on and do them up finger tight. Open up the door using the triangular security key. And remember that the door will actually fully come off, which is pretty important when it's as windy as it is today. So to do my framing, I'm going to switch the controller to setup, which is going to provide power to the camera. Make sure my camera is on, and then either through the viewfinder or through live view, frame up my shot. In some cameras, live view won't work with the USB cable plugged in. That's the case with this camera, so I'm just going to take the USB cable out and then look through the live view and frame up my shot. The first axis I'm going to do is the pan here so that I can do up the rest of my mount. I'm just going to line that up there and do up the bolts nice and tight to keep it in position. Now after you've done up the first bolt, you want to check your framing again in case you've knocked it out of position. No point doing up all 4 to discover that it's a little bit out. Once you've confirmed that the position is right, do up those other 3 bolts. Then it's time to adjust your other 2 axes. Undo the 8 bolts on the side of the mount, just enough so that you get a bit of movement on the 2 axes there. And then you can adjust your tilt and your roll as you see fit. There's a spirit level on the back of the unit just under the PhotoSentinel sticker if you want to use that to line it up with the horizon. And once you've decided on those 2 axes, lock them off by screwing in tight 1 bolt on either side just to lock it in place. Double check your framing again. Once you're happy with it, lock off those other bolts. Having framed my shot, the next thing to do is to set your camera settings. Now your camera settings are up to you as a photographer, but we do have a couple of recommendations. Aperture priority, because your light is going to change dramatically from shot to shot, from week to week, from season to season, across the period of your long-term time lapse. You must remember and double and triple check this, that your focus is in manual. If your focus is accidentally left to auto, what's going to happen is you're going to miss photos because the controller won't necessarily hold the trigger down long enough to both autofocus and take the photo. And of course, if something comes into frame that is closer to camera than the site you're photographing, that's going to change your focal length. I also recommend setting white balance to one of the manual settings. In some ways it doesn't matter which one, but you just want a consistent color palette through the entirety of your project because the natural light is going to change across the day and again across the seasons. So lock it to something consistent. Once you've done your camera settings, remember to switch the camera off and back on to save those settings. And once you switch it back on, those settings will be on the camera for the rest of your project. I'm going to plug that USB back in and switch the controller back to off. Before I switch the controller on for normal operation, I'm going to plug in my power source. Now, because this is the roof of our office, we've got lots of solar panels testing on here. I've just grabbed one of the ones that we've already installed up here. I'm going to plug that in. Solar panels are very simple to install. They're just 2 hose clamps around the bracket. Just make sure that you're pointing it at the sun. Now that obviously goes without saying, but have a think about the different seasons at your installation site and whether buildings alongside or trees may create shade in a different season to the one that you're installing, and adjust the position of the solar panel accordingly. Now once you've plugged it into the unit, to make sure that the unit is getting power and the solar panel is working properly, when you switch the unit on, you should see a power plug symbol. And if you see that, you know that the solar panel is working and that power is flowing through to the unit and charging the battery inside. Having switched the unit on, it's then just a matter of watching the display screen and making sure it goes through its full cycle, doing everything it should. Taking a photo, connecting to the internet, uploading that photo, uploading a status, and then shutting down again, saying sleeping until the next trigger at the appropriate time. Once the display has shown that the photo has uploaded and it's uploaded a status, then it's time to log on to the web app and make sure that all that information has come through properly. Check that the photo is there, check that the latest status is there. And of course at that time, you also want to check your photo. Make sure everything's in focus, make sure your framing is correct, and make sure that all your settings are right. I recommend staying on site for a few cycles of operation just to make sure everything's running smoothly. The last thing you want is to get all the way back to the office only to find out that it successfully connected once and uploaded that first photo, but then for some reason died after that. So hang around for a while, make sure that it's getting that cycle in. Once a few photos have uploaded and you've checked that everything is working as it should, it's time to close up the box. But there are a couple of last minute things to double check before you do that. First, it should go without saying, but we'll say it anyway, check that your on switch is on. And then check that your camera is on, check that your focus is set to manual and not auto, and then lastly, double check that your unit is getting power from the solar panel or the AC charger. Look for that little plug symbol on the display screen. And then once you've double and triple checked all those things, it's time to close up the box and start shooting long-term time lapse.